Hello and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Melissa, but if you've been subscribed and following along with my videos, you know that you can call me Missy. And you also know that I really love doing fun or cute or silly skits on this channel. Unfortunately, I have had a crazy month, and so I just haven't had time to add skits to my videos. So I do apologize for that if it's disappointing. With that out of the way, let's get into the purpose of this video. In this week's video, I am working on the next step to the project that is actually all about what I'm wearing right now. In my last two sewing videos, I made this shift, the underclothing, and then this beautiful flower petal dress. And in this video, we're continuing working on this overall Renaissance-inspired, dandelion-inspired dress design. So in my very brief and not totally well done research, I found out that particularly Florentine Renaissance style gowns were these empire waist dresses, and you had an undergown, which is what I am wearing, over top of a chemise, and then there was still an overdress that went over all of that. So this video, we are making the overdress section of this, which will be representative of the dandelion, and it will also include some sleeves that will tie onto this portion of this dress. So with all that said, let's get into it. Let me show you some of my concept sketches, starting with the sleeves. Following the dandelion motif, I have my little dandelion leaf here as an example, and then two different shapes for what I might like the sleeves to look like. I think I like this one better, and maybe it's just because I rendered the drawing more, so we're gonna go with that. And then for the overgown, here's some concept sketches. I don't think I'm going to add these shapes here. I think it's just going to be the leafiness. So for now, I need to create a pattern for the sleeve. I want to do a mock-up real quick as well for that. I'm hoping not to have to glue anything today or for this project, but if we run out of time, I might have to. Let's get working on that pattern.
I got ahead of myself and pulled out everything I needed to make a pattern before I realized I needed measurements.
First off, I need to figure out how big around these puppies are. Let's do that.
After wrestling with my tape measure, I decided it was best to write down my measurements on the chalkboard right behind me so that I could easily access it when I was ready.
All right, here's what I'm gonna go with for now. We'll make that into a pattern, make the pattern into a mock-up, and then we'll see how it goes.
As I usually do, the sleeve pattern was going to be a cut on the fold type pattern, and I did that by drawing a rectangle that was as long as I needed it to be, but only half as wide as I needed it to be. I then drew the leaf shapes on one edge and cut it out. Then I pulled out my trusty mock-up fabric, which is a thrifted sheet. This is actually the very same sheet that I used to make a wearable mock-up in a different video that I had done. I will link it somewhere here, or if not here, then down below. I didn't have much of this fabric left, so I just went ahead and cut out enough for one full sleeve. I sewed the pointy ends of the leafy shapes together, and then it was ready to try on.
Okay, so here's the mock-up, and this is what it looks like. I think it looks okay. I'm not 100% sure about it. A couple of adjustments that I think I'd like to do is to add just a little bit of ribbon or string at the tops of these, connecting them. This could lose an inch. I may end up switching up how the cutouts work.
After contemplating my life choices and then realizing I didn't have time to contemplate my life choices, I went ahead and started redrawing a different take on the same pattern. And so here you see a shadow of what could have been, because I don't end up using any of this either.
It's a new day and I am moving forward with this sleeve design. I know that I was waffling yesterday, but after discussing it with another brain, that of my husband, I decided that this is fine. This is going to work. I still have the issue of this being a little too wide, so I'm going to adjust the pattern to make it less wide there. I think another element that might be nice is if I use some lace to fill in some gaps. So if I make this fabric just a little bit shorter, then there'll be a gap between these. And then I can sew in a bit of lace. I have several different types of lace. So this is a nice sturdy bit of lace that I could use and create a little bit of an illusion of a gap between the edges here. I have some different options for what kind of lace that I could use. I need to make some little adjustments and then I can cut it out of my final fashion fabric and continue the process.
I needed the lace that I was going to use to bridge the gap in my sleeves to be nice and sturdy, so I went through all of my lace options and separated them based on which ones would be more sturdy and capable of filling that role. I then needed to buy myself some time so that I could figure out what type of lace I actually wanted to use in the final design, so I went ahead and adjusted the pattern while I ruminated on that. So as you can see, I shortened the width and I also made some minor adjustments to the shapes of the leaves.
I have here the fabric that I intend to use. This is a extra long tablecloth that I found at the thrift store about a year ago, and it really inspired me to do this project. It is 60% cotton and 40% polyester. So not 100% natural, so not super ideal, especially since I'm already doing a ton of layers, but it's just so pretty and there's enough of it, which is important. So we're just gonna go ahead and use this thrifted tablecloth.
And hope I don't die of heat stroke the first time that I wear this costume is the unspoken end to that sentence. Mindful of the pattern on the fabric, I made sure to cut all of my pieces in this particular orientation by first outlining my pattern pieces in chalk and then getting to work with the scissors.
Hello, it is another new day and I am on this hand sewing journey. I started this yesterday off camera because I need new batteries for this camera. I have begun hand sewing. You can see this is the front edge and then this is what I have done. These corners need a little bit of a different treatment, but it's just rolled because this fabric does very much want to fray. So I'm nearly done with one segment of sleeve. I have 3 more to go and I have to finish this one as well. I don't know how I'm gonna get this one done, but I think we just need to continue on our sewing journey and see where it takes us. So that's what I'm going to do.
And I did finish that sleeve because I'm not a quitter. except for when I am a quitter, which is when I decided to move on to the rest of the sleeves, and I knew I wouldn't have enough time to sew down all of the sleeve segments by hand and then add the lace and then do the entire gown part. This is just the sleeves, people.
I am just struggling to figure out how I'm going to get all of this done this week. I have other things going on, so I am experimenting with some more decorative stitching, and this makes it easy to see because I used white thread, and this is just a scrap piece. But I think it doesn't look too bad. I think that could be kind of pretty, actually. Especially with it being something of a fairy vibe. I also looked into my thread stash. This is the thread I was using. I knew that I had this thread, and I have a full spool of this as well, but this is even lighter than the other one. But I also have this thread, which I haven't even looked at yet, which I didn't realize that I had before, but I think this is an even closer match. So I'm going to experiment with different threads on this, and I'm getting back to you now. Here is this lighter thread. Here is that darker thread, but it is a lot more subtle, and I think that's what I would want to go with.
So yes, I went back and I defiled all that beautiful hand stitching in favor of my decorative machine stitching all around the edges.
All right, it is done. I have sewn over top of all of my beautiful hand stitching. I guess the only thing to do at this point is just to keep going.
True to my word, I kept going, and about halfway through getting the rest of the sleeves done, I began to wonder if it actually was faster to go with the machine because it felt like it took forever. I felt like I was climbing the misty mountains and slogging through a bog, all just to get to Mordor, which is what we may just call sewing the lace on. And just like any good Lord of the Rings travel montage, here's an aerial view. The quest continues as our lonely hero wrestles with her sewing machine. The thread, the fabric, the bobbin, the speed of the machine, making sure fingers don't get impaled. See, sewing is basically an epic fantasy adventure. We're all fantasizing about this, right, people? Right? I mean, what else can you call a thimble except for finger armor? Where many a fantasy hero are chased by the forces of evil, I'm chased by burnout and self-doubt. They're equal.
It is another day, and I finished this last night. I need to add this lace to my other 3 sleeve places. While I'm doing that, I will just show you how I went about getting those sleeves done.
I began by cutting out equal lengths of polyester lace and then bias tape in lengths long enough just to cover the ends of that lace. I then proceeded to fold those little bits of bias tape right over the loose ends of that lace, like so. And then I quick took it over to my machine and hit it with a zigzag stitch just to keep that bias tape in place over the end of the lace. This would create a nice anchor point for my stitches as I went to install the lace into my sleeves.
Now I have all of these little lace bits with their tabby things at the ends.
So I can move on to sewing them into my sleeves. I first pinned them in place at the length that I wanted them to be at. Sometimes this took a few tries. But then I was back at my old nemesis, hand sewing. I just went around the edges of the lace, hand stitching it into place, all the way down to the point just to make sure that it would be nice and secure, and also to keep the pointy part of the leaf shape wrapping itself around my arm. Otherwise, that little pointy end would be left to just kind of flap open whenever it wanted to. After doing all this, I don't know why I was surprised, but I was surprised at how secure it felt. I guess I always feel like my hand stitching has to be less secure than the machine.
It is once again another day, and in fact, the final day that I have given myself to work on this project. So we have a lot to do today. It took me all of the time that I had slotted for this project yesterday to finish adding the lace to all of my sleeve bits. They are finished. I have to add grommets. So I am just going to pound some in there. I don't know if that sounded okay. And then I have to make the whole overdress. So what am I doing here yapping? Let's get to work.
It was fairly straightforward to install the grommets on the top half of the sleeves. I just determined where I wanted the grommets to go. I used my leather punch to punch a hole in the top of the sleeve, inserted the grommets, and away we went. The elbow to bottom section of the sleeve was a little bit different because I needed the grommets to line up from the elbow to the bottom. So I started by adding the grommets to the top half of the forearm portion of the sleeve, and then I laid it over top of my bottom half of my top portion of the sleeve and used some chalk to mark where those would line up. From there, grommet installation is grommet installation, and it's not really anything super special.
So now I have this dress on, I can start figuring out where I want these sleeves to go.
It is a bit of a wrestle to get the sleeves up and on over all of the fabric on my chemise, especially with the way that the cutouts are constantly snagging on the fabric.
So I want this sleeve to go up to here. I'm just going to put a little pin. Okay, that pin was really difficult to get in. I'm just going to try and make it match up on the other side.
I then fought to get the bottom half of the sleeve tied to the top half of the sleeve, and I ended up looking like an action hero treating her own wounds. But I wasn't about to try and do that on the other sleeve, so I took it off and just tied it while it was not on my body. And then my husband had said something to me about using buttons to put the sleeves together, but it didn't make any sense when he first said it, until I decided that I didn't want to put grommets into my yellow gown. So I sewed buttons into where I wanted to tie the sleeves to the gown. And then I went and got on my trusty sewing machine and sewed just a little loop at the end of some ribbon pieces. And then those loops could go around the button and tie to the sleeves to hold them in place.
We got sleeves, and now it's time to do the rest of the dress.
What I have here is the bodice pattern for the yellow dress. Once again, I needed to have straps that would cover up the straps of the dress that I would be wearing underneath. So I made the straps to this green portion of the dress a little bit wider than on the yellow dress. I also wanted to alter the neckline to make a nice deep V shape at the front. And with that done, I was pretty much ready to cut the pattern out. I could be fairly confident that it would fit because it was based on a pattern that I had already made and knew would fit. I wanted to have a kind of waistband go around the bottom edge of the bodice. So I just cut a strip of paper out, and that would then be the pattern for that portion. And it's pretty much rinse and repeat for the back portion of the dress. There was even less that needed to be changed about that pattern. Despite what I said earlier about being fairly confident about the fit, I still felt like I needed to make a mock-up. Ah, that constant battle with self-doubt. But I cut the mock-up out anyways and went ahead and sewed it together so that I could try it on real quick. And actually, I'm glad I did. I think I forgot to add some seam allowance to the back straps or something. Anyways, here I am trying it on. My audio for this portion came out with a humming sound, so I decided to just voice over it. I added a small hem to one side of the mock-up to see how it covered my undergown. It does a pretty good job in front, but the strap needs to be widened in the underarm portion of the back. I mostly like the front, but I think I want to add just a tiny bit more to the neckline. I used masking tape in order to add material to my pattern piece. And with that, though I would have probably wanted to make another mock-up, I knew I definitely didn't have enough time. So I went ahead and started cutting out my bodice pieces. And I used bias tape to finish off all of the edges of the sleeve and neckline of that bodice piece by first machine stitching it to the edge and then folding that bias tape under and hand stitching it down all the way around. I wish I would have had more of that black bias tape. I think it looks better with the dress, or even some green bias tape that would match the fabric better. All that said, it doesn't really show when the dress is on. I was so behind schedule and I didn't want to dilly-dally by doing my whole today is a new day thing. So I got up in my pajamas and got right to work. Here you can see me laying out a skirt that I have so that I could use that to try and make a skirt pattern. I just kind of vaguely traced it onto some paper and then I went through and cleaned up my lines before cutting everything out. But if you recall, this is supposed to be a leaf skirt. So I needed to figure out how many of these leaves I would cut out, and then I needed to turn this skirt pattern into a leaf pattern. And of course, I did this through witchcraft. I mean, is there any other way? You can't just go turning skirt patterns into leaf skirt patterns. I mean, it goes against nature, right? Jokes aside, I was discontent with what I had come up with, and so I figured I needed to remake the same pattern. I wanted it to be a little bit longer based on looking at how it interacted with the skirt, so I used my tape measure to make sure that it would be the right length. And ape that I am, I used my foot to help me get these measurements right. Finally, I freehanded those dandelion leaf shapes that I had gotten pretty good at drawing up. And then I cut the whole thing out. And at this point, I was just really hoping that I would be able to cut all of these leaf shapes out of my fabric. But I was destined for disappointment because as I used my chalk outline method, I realized there was no way I was going to fit all of these leaves on this piece of fabric that I had. So once again, I had to alter my pattern, and then I was able to get something.
So clearly I did not get this project done in the time frame that I had hoped I would be able to. So we are officially in my editing week and I just need to get this skirt done. So at the beginning I said I hoped that I wouldn't need to glue anything, but I think it's time to glue. In order to just get it knocked out and wearable, I need to just get it done. So here we go.
As you can see, I left off the previous day with just my pattern and a blocked out version of where all of the pattern pieces would be and what I would be cutting out. So this day I needed to continue the work by adding the details of the outline, putting some strategic pins in so that I could cut out 2 leaves at a time, and then of course the cutting. And this was all before I could get around to actually attacking it with the glue gun, which actually wouldn't happen until the next day. And so this is at last the final day and the gluing began. I found that starting with the corners was easiest. and then I could just kind of work my way around the leaf shape. I also started out by rolling the edge, but I ultimately gave up on that and just folded it over and glued it down. And with that done, it was time to attach the skirt to the bodice. I arranged my leaf shapes up against the bodice and then realized that I had done it all wrong and also that I missed a spot while gluing, and I had to redo it all over again. Additionally, my measurements were off, so the back 2 leaf pieces overlapped a little bit, which I didn't mind too much. I got the dress and the sleeves all completed. I'm so excited for how it looks. I love all the slashes throughout the sleeves. This dress is so fun. I love all the movement in the skirt. It feels very fairycore to me, but also I love the historical inspiration for it. It just, ooh! I'm living my ever after fantasy lifestyle. As always, there are things that can be critiqued, particularly since I had to resort to using glue on the skirt. I would love to go ahead and give the hem the same treatment as the sleeves because it does get very hot and this is hot glue. So if the glue gets hot, then the glue comes undone and now my skirt is unraveling while I wear it. Not a good thing. That being said, thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. If you made it to this point, go ahead and type out a huzzah in the comments or whatever else you would like to say. And if you liked anything about that video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. And if you would like to see anything else that I do sewing videos, I do art videos, I do home improvement stuff, and then I'll just do like random stuff. So it should be fun. If you'd like to follow along with that, go ahead and subscribe, and then I'll be able to see you in the next video. Bye. Are you there? Sound device, are you working?